Hello YouTubers, this is your friendly neighborhood Theophage. This is an addendum to my video, Refuting the Cosmological Argument, and it covers two possible errors in my refutation, as well as the argument from contingency for the sake of completeness. Remember that the argument from contingency is the other but less modern and well-known formulation of the cosmological argument. First, let's talk about one of my potential errors. It was pointed out to me by both YouTuber Evangelical1 in his response to my video and by YouTuber Rational Responder in the comment section of his video titled Atheist Challenge that my refutation does not take into account the idea of simultaneous causation. A simultaneous cause is one that exists and operates at the exact same point in time as its effect. If you recall, my refutation of the Kalam cosmological argument was that if the universe began at the very first moment of time, it is necessarily exempt from having a cause because there was no point in time when the universe did not exist, nor was there a point in time before its existence for the cause to operate. This is because, as I argued, causes have to be prior in time to their effects. But if, as Evangelical1 and Rational Responder argue, causes don't have to be prior in time to their effects, then my exemption for the universe fails, and thus my rebuttal fails. Now, I don't believe that simultaneous causation really exists or is logically possible, but it is clearly something that I need to address in order to honestly remain an atheist. In his video, Atheist Challenge, Rational Responder essentially offers us the cosmological argument and challenges atheists to solve the problem it gives or admit that our atheism is incorrect. His options for the beginning of the universe are either that it was A, self-caused, or B, caused by a transcendent creator, and we know who that is. Rational Responder argues that the universe being self-caused is logically contradictory because, quote, if you take the option that the universe caused itself to exist, as far as I can see, that is a logical contradiction. If the universe caused itself to exist, that means that the universe would have to exist before the universe ever existed in order to bring its existence about. Notice in this quote, he is using the idea of causes needing to be prior to their effects, and that is why self-causation is logically contradictory. A thing obviously can't exist before it exists, and I would agree. But if we introduce the idea of causes existing simultaneously with their effects, as he argued later, that gets rid of the problem of things causing themselves. Rational Responder, and anyone else using simultaneous causation, essentially shoots themselves in the foot. So what we are left with is either causes have to come at a point in time before their effects, and thus the universe is uncaused because there is no point in time prior to its existence, or causes can exist simultaneously with their effects, in which case it's okay for the universe to cause itself. Both options still leave the cosmological argument refuted. Sorry guys, but keep trying. Next, let's look at the other and older form of the cosmological argument, called the argument from contingency. A thing is called contingent if it depends on something else for its existence. Basically, all of the things we see around us are contingent things, as they were all caused to exist by something else. The opposite of this is a necessary thing. Something that necessarily exists cannot not exist, and thus does not need to be caused by something else. Formally, the argument looks like this. Premise 1, all contingent things require a cause. Premise 2, all things in the universe are contingent, therefore the universe itself is contingent. Conclusion, therefore the universe needs a cause. As you can see, the only real difference between this argument and the Kalam cosmological argument is that this one speaks of contingent things needing a cause, and the Kalam speaks of things which begin needing a cause. In my earlier video, I showed that the Kalam cosmological argument is invalid because it commits the fallacy of equivocation between premises 1 and 2. This argument does not commit that fallacy. So is this argument valid? No, it isn't, and I'll show why. But first, let me sidetrack to the other potential problem with my earlier video. Evangelical1 said that not only did the Kalam argument not commit the fallacy of equivocation, but I was the one that committed this fallacy by my use of the word always. The word always can be used to mean something that has been around for an infinite amount of time, as in the sentence, "It has always existed forever, thus it never began to exist." Or it can mean a finite amount of time, as in, "I have always been the owner of this car." He apparently believes my refutation of Kalam rests on the equivocation of the word always. But this is simply not true, since I only used the word always in a supplemental role to try to explain better. It wasn't the main thrust of my argument. So equivocation or not, its inclusion or absence does not affect my refutation one bit. But more importantly, it is not an equivocation at all. Notice that in both the infinite and finite uses of always, there is one core meaning: at every possible point in time. If time goes back infinitely far, and something has been around at every possible point in that infinite time, then we rightly say it has always been around. Similarly, if I am the only owner the car has ever had, then I have always been the owner of that car. At every possible point in time that the car could have been owned, it was owned by me. So when I said that the universe has always been in existence, even though it is only of finite age, I am using the word in exactly the same way. The universe has been in existence at every possible point in time, but time only goes finitely into the past. So if not equivocation, how then is the argument from contingency invalid? It is invalid because it commits the fallacy of composition in premise 2. The fallacy of composition is the assumption that because every part of a whole has or does not have some property, then the whole itself must have or not have that same property. This is clearly true for some things. If you build a bridge with blocks that are red and plastic, then it is true that the bridge itself will be red and plastic. But it is not necessarily true of all things and all properties. For an example, each individual piece of a mechanical clock does not have the ability to tell us the time, but the clock as a whole certainly does. Premise 2 of the argument from contingency says that because everything in the universe is contingent, then the universe itself must be contingent. This is simply not true, and I say the universe itself is obviously necessarily existent, not contingent. To argue that it must be contingent because its parts are, is to commit the fallacy of composition, and thus this argument is busted. So again, sorry guys, but keep trying, and thanks.